Welcome back, everyone, to the deep dive. This time, we're going to be tackling the world of Roman gladiators.
Oh, yeah.
You know, those brutal fights to the death,
Right.
roaring crowds, thumbs
Yeah.
up, thumbs down.
Mm.
But we're going way deeper than that,
Definitely.
beyond those Hollywood myths.
Uh-huh.
We've got this awesome article
Right.
that's just packed with insights into the real lives of these ancient warriors.
The real deal.
Yeah, the real deal.
What's fascinating is just how much we've romanticized gladiatorial combat.
Yeah.
The truth is, these games were a complex mix.
Yeah.
Sport, entertainment, and even like social commentary.
Okay, so let's get into it.
Let's do it.
Right off the bat, this article just busts the biggest myth
Yeah.
that gladiators always fought to the death.
It's not true.
Like, come on.
Right, and this is where the business side comes in.
Okay.
These guys were valuable assets, like prized athletes.
Oh, yeah.
Their owners, the Laneste,
Right.
invested heavily in their training and upkeep. It wasn't in their financial interest to see their gladiators constantly getting killed off.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
But wouldn't, like, occasional deaths just add to the spectacle?
Sure.
Make the whole thing even more exciting for the crowd?
Perhaps.
Yeah.
But there was also, a strong element of skill and strategy involved.
Right.
These weren't just mindless brawls.
Mm-hmm.
Gladiators trained extensively. They mastered, various weapons and fighting styles. They even had referees called summa rudis
Really?
to ensure fair fights and, keep things somewhat civilized.
Wow, I never knew they had referees.
Yeah.
So what happened when a gladiator was clearly outmatched?
Oh,
Was there any way out of a fight?
absolutely. The article mentions a signal for mercy,
Okay.
raising a single finger.
Oh, wow.
And get this, it wasn't the bloodthirsty crowd who decided the gladiator's fate,
No.
but the game's patron, or even the emperor himself.
Whoa. Talk about power.
Yeah.
It's starting to sound less like a bloodbath and more like a carefully orchestrated performance.
Exactly. These games were about control,
Uh-huh.
both on and off the arena floor.
Right.
They were a way for the Roman elite to display their power and influence.
Okay.
And that brings us to another fascinating aspect: the sheer variety of gladiators.
Oh, yeah. This article paints a vivid picture of all these different classes. It's like a fighting game come to life.
Yeah.
You got the Retinarius, the net and trident guy who was all about agility and trickery. Then you got the Murmillo, heavily armored, wielding a short sword called a gladius.
And don't forget the Thracians,
Oh, right.
recognizable by their curved swords and small shields.
Yeah,
Each type of gladiator had a distinct fighting style,
right.
which kept the games fresh and exciting for the audience.
Yeah.
It was a spectacle, but it was also a display of athleticism and skill.
So it wasn't just about brute strength.
Right.
These guys had to be smart and strategic to survive. It's kind of like a mix of boxing, fencing, and even chess.
You're getting it.
I know, right?
And speaking of strategy, the article dives into the intense training these gladiators went through.
Oh, yeah.
We're not talking about a few push-ups and, some sword swinging.
I bet it was way more intense than that.
Oh, yeah. They trained in specialized schools.
Okay.
Called ludi,
Right.
under the watchful eye of a lanista.
Uh-huh.
They'd start with wooden swords called rudis
Okay.
and work their way up to the real deal.
Oh, wow.
And let me tell you, the punishments for mistakes were brutal.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
I always assumed most gladiators were slaves forced into fighting.
Sure.
But this article mentions that some actually volunteered.
Right.
What kind of person would willingly choose that life?
That's a great question. And it speaks to the complex motivations at play.
Yeah.
Some were drawn by the potential for fame and fortune.
Okay.
Others saw it as a way to escape poverty or even gain freedom.
So even though it was incredibly dangerous, there was a chance for advancement.
Yeah.
Some gladiators actually rose to celebrity status.
Exactly. Successful gladiators were like rock stars in ancient Rome.
Really?
Their names and faces were everywhere.
Wow.
On mosaics, pottery, even graffiti.
That's crazy.
Imagine fans clamoring for their sweat-soaked armbands.
I can see the parallels to modern-day sports and celebrity culture.
Yeah.
But this fame also highlights a darker side of the games.
Right.
These gladiators were essentially performers,
Yeah.
putting their lives on the line for the entertainment of the masses.
It's a stark reminder that the Roman fascination with spectacle came at a human cost.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've got gladiators as skilled warriors, celebrities, and even symbols of Roman power.
Right.
But there's one more piece of the puzzle that really caught my attention.
Yeah.
The Venators.
Ah, yes, the Venators.
Yeah.
The brave souls who faced off against wild animals in the arena.
Oh, wow.
These weren't technically gladiators.
Okay.
But they played a crucial role in the games.
Right.
Adding a whole other level of danger and excitement.
Wild animals.
Yeah.
Seriously. What kind of creatures are we talking about here?
Lions.
Lions.
Tigers.
Tigers, bears.
Bears, you name it.
Wow.
The Romans were obsessed with exotic animals.
Right.
They shipped in creatures from all corners of the empire.
Oh my gosh.
Lions, tigers, leopards, elephants, even ostriches and crocodiles.
Wow.
These animal hunts or venations were incredibly popular with the crowds.
That's insane. I can't even imagine trying to fight a lion with anything less than a tank.
Right.
These guys must have been either incredibly skilled or completely fearless.
They were highly trained hunters and fighters, skilled with spears, nets, and even bows and arrows.
Wow.
But even with training, facing a wild animal in the arena was a terrifying prospect.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
It speaks to the Roman fascination with spectacle.
Right.
Their desire to see man pitted against beast in a battle for survival.
I'm starting to see that the gladiatorial games were more than just brutal fights.
Right.
They were complex social events that reflected Roman culture and values, you know? It was entertainment, but it was also about power.
Definitely.
Control and pushing the limits of human courage.
Exactly. And as we delve deeper, we'll see how these themes played out in the lives of the gladiators themselves and in the eventual decline of the games.
This is getting really interesting. I can't wait to uncover more about these fascinating figures and the world they inhabited.
Me too.
Yeah, this is going to be good.
Yeah.
All right. Okay, so we've talked about the different types of gladiators and their training and, you know, the wild animal hunts.
Right.
But this article, like, it goes beyond the spectacle and really digs into the lives of these men.
It does.
What's often overlooked is that sense of community that existed within the you know, those gladiator schools.
Yeah.
These men were training, eating, living together, facing death on a regular basis. You know, they formed strong bonds, almost like a brotherhood.
Absolutely.
That makes sense. But wouldn't there also be, like, intense rivalry?
Oh, yeah.
Especially with fame and fortune on the line?
Of course, competition was fierce.
Yeah.
But there was also a deep respect among these warriors.
Oh.
They understood the risks each other faced.
Right.
The article actually draws parallels to modern-day sports teams.
Oh, wow.
Where you have individual ambition,
but
also a sense of camaraderie.
It's interesting to think about the psychology of these gladiators.
Yeah.
You know, they were celebrated as heroes, yet their lives were constantly in danger.
Right.
How did they reconcile those two realities?
That's a question historians are still trying to understand.
Yeah.
Some gladiators may have embraced the danger.
Okay.
You know, the adrenaline rush of combat.
The thrill of it?
Exactly. Others may have focused on the potential rewards.
Okay.
The chance to gain freedom or even amass wealth.
The article mentions a gladiator named Flamma, who fought for an incredible 13 years.
Wow.
Winning 34 matches.
That's amazing.
And surviving countless others.
That takes incredible skill and resilience.
It really does.
Flamma's story is a testament to the fact that these men were more than just brutal fighters. They were athletes, performers, and even celebrities in their own right.
But even with skill and luck, there was always the risk of serious injury or death.
Sure.
What happened to gladiators who couldn't fight anymore?
Well, some were fortunate enough to retire.
Okay.
And live out their days in relative peace.
Good for them.
Others, those with debilitating injuries, might face a less fortunate fate.
Right.
The article mentions that some retired gladiators became trainers.
Oh, wow.
Passing on their skills to the next generation.
That's kind of like a coach in modern sports, except way more intense.
Yeah.
It seems like gladiators had a limited career span, kind of like athletes today.
That's a good comparison.
Yeah.
And just like in modern sports, there were probably a select few who achieved legendary status. Right. Their names etched in history.
But for the majority, it was a grueling profession with a high price to pay.
Absolutely.
All this talk about gladiators makes me think about the audience.
Yeah.
What was it like to be a spectator at these games?
Imagine tens of thousands of people packed into the Colosseum.
Oh, wow.
The energy electric with anticipation.
Oh, God.
You've got vendors selling food and drinks.
Right.
Gamblers placing bets.
Oh, yeah.
And everyone from emperors to commoners eager for the spectacle to begin.
That must have been an intense sensory experience.
It was.
You know, the roar of the crowd, the clash of steel, the smell of blood and sweat.
It was a true spectacle, a multi-sensory experience that captured the Roman imagination.
These games were more than just entertainment.
Right.
They were social events, political gatherings, and even religious rituals.
Absolutely.
So it was about more than just watching guys fight.
Yeah.
It was a way for Romans to connect with each other.
Right.
To celebrate their culture and to affirm their place in society.
It's exactly. The gladiatorial games were woven into the fabric of Roman life.
Wow.
They reflected their values, their beliefs, and their fascination with both spectacle and violence.
But even with their popularity, the games eventually declined.
Yeah.
The article points to the rise of Christianity as a major factor. How did these two seemingly opposing forces clash?
As Christianity spread throughout the Roman Empire,
Right.
its emphasis on peace and compassion challenged the brutality of the gladiatorial games. The idea of entertainment based on violence and suffering became increasingly at odds with Christian teachings.
I remember you mentioned the monk Telemachus earlier,
Right.
the one who was killed trying to stop a gladiatorial match.
Yes, a very powerful story.
Yeah, his story really highlights the shifting moral landscape of the time.
Absolutely. His death, while tragic, became a rallying cry for those who opposed the games.
Right.
It showed that people were starting to question the ethics of such violent spectacles.
So it wasn't just about religion. There were also social and economic factors at play.
You're right. As the Roman Empire evolved, its priorities shifted.
Okay.
The early emperors had used the games to solidify their power and appease the masses. But as the empire grew more stable, these spectacles became less essential.
So the games were kind of like a political tool, a way for emperors to maintain control.
In a way, yes.
Okay.
They provided a distraction, a way to channel public energy and appease the masses. But as the empire's needs changed, so too did its attitudes towards gladiatorial combat.
Plus, maintaining these games must have been incredibly expensive.
Yeah.
With all the logistics of training, housing, and transporting gladiators and animals.
You're absolutely right. As the empire faced economic challenges, the cost of these spectacles became increasingly burdensome.
Okay.
So you had this combination of factors,
Yeah.
changing moral values,
Right.
evolving political priorities, and economic pressures, all contributing to the decline of the games.
It's amazing how something so deeply ingrained in Roman culture could eventually fade away.
It is.
It makes you wonder what aspects of our own culture might future generations look back on with the same sense of disbelief or disapproval.
That's a thought-provoking question.
Yeah.
Perhaps our obsession with reality TV, where people are pitted against each other for our amusement, or the way violence is often glorified in movies and video games.
It's fascinating to think about how our own values and entertainment choices might be viewed by future generations.
It is.
But before we get too carried away with the future,
Right.
there's one more aspect of the gladiatorial games we need to explore.
Okay.
A topic that challenges traditional assumptions about these ancient warriors.
You're talking about the female gladiators?
Yes.
The gladiatrices.
The gladiatrices.
Their presence in the arena adds a whole new dimension to our understanding of Roman society and the role of women in that world.
That's right. I'm really curious to dive into this. Who were these women and what drove them to fight? All right, let's talk about the gladiatresses. The female gladiators. This is where things get really interesting. You know, when most people picture a gladiator, they think of a big burly dude.
Right.
But the fact that women were stepping into the arena,
Yeah.
it completely changes the game.
It does. It challenges our assumptions about Roman society and what women were capable of.
Right.
Keep in mind, this was a culture where women were largely confined to the domestic sphere.
Right.
Yet here they were engaging in one of the most dangerous and public spectacles imaginable.
Exactly. So who were these women? What drove them to become gladiators?
Unfortunately, the historical record is a bit thin on the ground when it comes to gladiatresses.
Really?
We have scattered accounts, inscriptions, and even some artwork depicting them.
Okay.
But their stories are often fragmented and incomplete.
That's too bad. I'm dying to know more about their lives. Did they have the same training as men? Did they use the same weapons and fighting styles?
It's likely they underwent similar training regimens, learning how to handle weapons and fight effectively.
Okay.
Some sources suggest they may have even trained alongside male gladiators, which would have been quite the sight to see.
I bet. What about their fighting styles? Did they specialize in certain types of combat, like the Reticerius or the Murmillo?
We don't have specific details about their preferred fighting styles.
Okay.
But based on the limited evidence we do have, it seems they fought with a variety of weapons and techniques.
This article actually mentions a gladiatrix wielding a gladius and shield fighting with a ferocity that rivaled any man. It must have been quite a spectacle to see these women defy traditional gender roles and engage in such a brutal and public display of skill and strength.
Absolutely. And their presence in the arena likely drew a lot of attention.
Yeah.
You can imagine the gasps from the crowd, the cheers and jeers, the debates about whether women belonged in such a violent spectacle.
It's fascinating to think about the reactions they must have elicited. Some people were probably shocked and appalled, while others were likely cheering them on.
Exactly. And their presence in the arena likely sparked conversations about gender roles and societal norms. It challenged the very notion of what it meant to be a woman in ancient Rome.
This makes me wonder, did gladiatresses fight against men, or were there separate matches for women?
That's a great question. And the evidence suggests both scenarios may have occurred.
Okay.
Some accounts describe gladiatresses fighting each other, while others depict them facing off against men,
Wow.
which would have been even more controversial.
It's almost like the Romans were pushing the boundaries of their own cultural norms, testing the limits of what was acceptable. It makes you wonder, did gladiatresses face additional challenges or prejudices compared to their male counterparts?
It's likely they did. Even though they were stepping into the same arena as men, they were still operating within a patriarchal society.
Right.
There may have been limitations on their training, the types of weapons they could use, or even who they were allowed to fight against.
It's a reminder that even though they were defying traditional roles, they were still navigating a world that was largely defined by men.
Exactly. And it speaks to their courage and determination. Despite the challenges, these women chose to step into the arena to embrace a life of danger and risk their stories. Challenge us to reconsider our assumptions about ancient Rome and the complexities of its social fabric.
It's incredible to think that these women existed, that they dared to challenge the norms of their time and make their mark on history. It really adds a whole new dimension to our understanding of gladiatorial combat.
It does, and it underscores the fact that history is full of surprises, stories that challenge our expectations and force us to see the past in a new light.
Well, this deep dive has been an incredible journey. We've busted myths, explored the lives of gladiators, delved into the social and cultural significance of the games, and even uncovered the fascinating world of gladiatresses. It's clear that there's so much more to this story than meets the eye.
There is, and I hope this has sparked a curiosity in you to learn even more about these captivating figures and the world they inhabited. They were real people with real stories, and their legacy continues to fascinate us centuries later.
Absolutely. So to everyone listening, if you're intrigued by what you've heard today, don't stop here. Keep digging, keep exploring, and keep diving deep into the fascinating world of history. Who knows what other hidden gems you might uncover?
And perhaps one day you'll even find yourself standing in the ruins of the Colosseum, imagining the roar of the crowd, the clash of steel, and the stories of the gladiators who fought and died within its walls.
Thanks for joining us on the Deep Dive.